The Ghosts of Mansfield House, presented by Absolutely Haunted. Does your town have a huge abandoned home, one that everyone whispers about? Would you agree with the whispers or think they are hogwash? Our town has a huge grand manor, built in the Second Empire architecture from the 1800s, that sits just on the outskirts of town. You can see its tall mansard roof over the trees long before you see the rest of it. Mansfield House has seen its share of suffering, murder, horror, and grief almost from the moment the wretched place sprang from the ground. It's a rather spooky-looking place, and the feel of its chilly interior will do nothing to lay the thought that it is occupied by more than the living to rest. It is said that if you hear the sound of the piano playing while passing the unoccupied mansion, you should run away quickly, for if you do not, you will soon view one of the spirits that haunt the huge old home. The wealthy family that owns the property has done well keeping it up, since it was constructed in the 1800s at the bottom of a river bluff. I dare say that even though it is not lived in, one would never know it if you were passing through. They say that William Mansfield, the original grandfather and first family member in these parts, had it constructed for his future bride, a young girl of 18. Emma Krug was her name. She was the daughter of a man named Emerald Krug and his first wife, Sarah. Sarah had died in childbirth, giving life to young Emma, and her father never let her forget it. He cared very little for the little girl, and most would say that he did not know his oldest child at all. At 26, William Mansfield was not afraid to go after what he wanted. It was not that he really wanted Emma, but he did want a connection to Emerald Krug for business reasons. Unfortunately, William was not known to be a kind person. He did not amass his wealth, which was substantial by 26, by caring about who he hurt or crushed when they got in his way. His treatment of Emma was anything but loving, jealous, possessive, cruel. William Mansfield's affection twisted quickly into obsession, and the grand home, meant to be a sanctuary, became a prison. Emma hadn't come alone. She brought with her a woman named Mary Finley, a quiet presence with eyes that had seen too much. Mary was no ordinary servant. She had raised Emma from infancy, stepping in after Emma's mother, Sarah, died giving birth. Emma's father, cold with grief and buried in his empire and second family, had always blamed his daughter for Sarah's death. So Emma was left in Mary's care, her nanny, her mother figure, her only true protector. But now, it's said that both Emma and Mary still roam the halls of that old house. Emma with sorrow in her eyes, and Mary with something darker, something watchful. Some say Mary never left because she knew what William would do and she had been waiting. Make no mistake, Emma was raised to be the perfect wife, groomed, polished, and quietly pushed out the door the moment she came of age. Her stepmother, Agnes Krug, despised her. To Agnes, Emma was a lingering shadow of the first wife, Sarah, a daily reminder of Emerald's true heart, which would never be hers. She wanted the girl gone, married off, and out of sight. Emma was given an education, but only the kind deemed proper for a future lady of the manor. How to manage servants, set a table, and host without speaking too much. Nothing more. When her piano teacher, an old man with kind eyes, told her father she was a rare talent, a prodigy even, he was dismissed that very week. Emerald Krug had no use for a daughter who imagined herself destined for more. Music was for dreamers, and daughters like Emma were not allowed to dream. 2 weeks later, Mary Finley was dead. They said she fell in front of a carriage in the long, winding drive. The horses trampled her before the driver could even react. It was quick, brutal, final. Emma was inconsolable. Mary had been more than a servant. She had been the only mother Emma had ever known. Her father and stepmother were present in Mansfield House when it happened, having been summoned by William to help squelch what he saw as Emma's attitude. Her father was sent over the edge with the amount of tears shed for a servant, as that is all he saw Mary Finley as, paid help. But Emma's grief would not be her only burden. Soon, fear rained down on her, because Mary didn't stay buried. She came back, and from that moment on, Emma was never truly alone in that house again. Emma confided once to her new lady's maid, in a whisper barely above breath, that she had awoken one night to find Mary Finley, her Mary standing at the foot of her bed, weeping. The ghost had come to her in sorrow, not fury. Pale, translucent, and broken, Mary's face bore the terrible marks left by the horses, the crushed cheekbone, the torn mouth, the lifeless eye that had once watched Emma with such love. The sight had filled Emma with such dread that Mary, even in death, moved into the shadows of the room to spare her the horror. But she spoke. She begged Emma to leave, to pack a bag and flee Mansfield House before it was too late. Something wicked lingered inside William, something old and not quite human. Mary warned the girl that something had already turned its eye toward Emma. Mary had warned Emma that she was surrounded by people she could not trust. So Emma never told the new maid what she planned to do, and it was just as well, for the new lady's maid she confided in was not loyal, at least not to Emma. She was one of his favorites. One of the women William Mansfield visited late at night when he thought no one saw. Had Emma said more, the maid would have run straight to him and reported anything Emma had said. And then, who knows what fate might have come for her even sooner. William Mansfield grew more enraged with each passing day as Emma began to speak of the horrifying figure that had begun to haunt her. She told anyone who would listen that she had seen Mary Finley, the ghostly woman whose spectral form seemed to loom over the mansion, desperately trying to warn her of the terrible fate that awaited. Emma had tried to escape once, but William's cruelty had punished her so severely that she dared not attempt it again. Soon, Emma learned to keep the chilling encounters to herself. Each night, as the darkness settled, Mary's ghostly form would awaken Emma from her sleep, her mournful sobs echoing in the cold air. The ghost would lie at the foot of the bed, a pale figure in the shadows, whispering frantically, "Leave before it's too late." Emma sat on the large, dimly lit porch, her eyes widening in horror as she watched William's cruelty unfold before her. The young stable boy, barely a man, had made some small mistake, something insignificant in Emma's eyes. But to William, it was a trespass that demanded punishment. She could feel the bile rising in her throat as she saw him strike the child. The cruel slap to the ear, sending the boy tumbling to the ground. William's boot came down with sickening force, kicking the boy twice in the stomach. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to rush to the boy's side to stop the violence. But before she could move, the air grew colder, and the ghostly figure of Mary Finley materialized beside her. Her translucent form trembled with sorrow, her eyes wide and pleading. With a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the grave, Mary whispered, "Do not intervene. If you challenge him now, the punishment you will suffer will be unspeakable." Emma froze, terror gripping her as the ghost's warning sank in. She could only watch, helpless, as the horrors of William's wrath continued to unfold. It was not lost on Emma how badly her stepmother had chosen when she had decided upon William. She had never known a crueler man, and she had been certain he had caused Mary's death long before the woman started appearing and confirmed her theory. William had come from behind a set of bushes and had pushed her into the path of the approaching coach. Emma never doubted Mary's word. William had no redeeming qualities, and he would enter her room at night, forcing himself onto her and telling her that if she wanted the nightly visits to stop for a while, she had better do her duty and produce the child he wanted. A son. No female child would do. He warned Emma that a female child born before a male heir would disappear. He did not explain how, but Emma now had a mother's instinct to protect her unborn child, male or female, and that meant escaping Mansfield House as quickly as possible. I find it interesting that Emerald Krug and his wife had departed Mansfield House almost as soon as Mary was dead and out of the way. Emma had begged her father to let her return to her room in the eaves of his home. But Emerald had told her not to be ridiculous. She was a married woman now, and it would be unseemly if she returned to his home without her husband. Emerald Krug swept past his daughter, who was in tears, and made his way out the front door to his waiting carriage. It was reported that Emma's stepmother, Agnes, hurrying out the door behind Emerald, had turned back at the front door and made the cutting remark that Emma had made her bed and now she must lie in it. Considering that it was Agnes who had made Emma's bed, perhaps Agnes should have been the one to lie in it. Unfortunately, there is a big stone monument with her likeness cut into the granite that reminds people that Emma tried to do exactly what her father and stepmother ordered, and she failed. The carved effigy tells us, "Here lies Emma Mansfield," upon this cold and lonely hillside that overlooks the very valley where her life was stolen. In the spring of 1885, Emma began to show signs of illness. The doctor was brought to Mansfield House, to William Mansfield's delight. He was assured that Emma was with child. The doctor believed she was only around 3 months along and said that she would give birth to the new baby around October. For a brief time, this stopped her husband's nightly visits, and he was more than happy to leave her to whatever it is that women do and spend his attentions on women who were much more willing. But Mary Finley was not happy to leave Emma to her own devices, and upon one of her evening walks in the garden, Mary had materialized before the very pregnant Emma. No one knows what the spirit said to the girl, but that evening found Emma secreting a packed bag away. She was going to make a run for it, hoping her Aunt Betty, her mother's sister in New York, would take her and her unborn child in. Emma had a plan. She would wait until the house turned in for the night, because the servants were not to be trusted, as they reported to William anything she said or did. Once she believed they were asleep, she would quietly disappear into the darkness of the countryside, making her way to the train station. She had hidden money when she married, just for this reason, in one of her big trunk linings, as she had not met William before the marriage, and she was afraid of not knowing his personality. It had been Mary's idea, and once again, Emma sent up a little prayer for her old nanny's soul. She prayed she could find some peace. At midnight, the story the servants had whispered to their family members in the years after was, Emma had tried to make her escape, but unbeknownst to her, William had returned from his business trip a day early and was roaming the house that night as he was wont to do. When hearing her light footfalls upon the upstairs landing, William came out of the library to find out who was walking through the hall, and that is when he saw Emma standing near the top of the stairs. Bag in hand, her face would have given her away even if she had not had the bag clutched in white fingers. She was staring at him in horror and shock. He noticed that she was dressed in travel clothes and appeared to think she was going somewhere with his son in her womb. Oh, this would never do. He took the stairs 2 at a time. He was enraged. How dare she try to leave him? No one leaves William Mansfield. He shot across the landing and grasped Emma by the neck, attempting to half-drag, half-carry Emma back to her room. Was it the ghost of Mary Finley who had appeared in the hallway screaming? Or was it the life that grew in her belly that urged her on? No one knows why, but Emma decided to fight. She raised her small fist, striking her husband about his face and scratching him with her nails. She shot toward the staircase, determined to get away before William recovered. She never dreamed that the pain would set William onto a whole other level of craziness, and without thinking, he picked her up by the back of the neck and flung the petite Emma down the stairs, without even a single thought for his unborn child. She died the instant she hit the ground. It was all witnessed by the old butler. The cover-up was on, as the staff was terrified of William and knew what he could do to their own families if they spoke out. That was why the old butler had backed into the shadow of the downstairs parlor and quietly made his way back to his room, where he pretended he had only just awoken. He felt bad for the girl, but getting his own family killed was not going to bring her back. He did wonder at how well William portrayed himself over the next few weeks, as the grieving widower who had lost a child in the fall, too. People could not give him enough sympathy, and he ate it up with a spoon. Yes, William Mansfield was the epitome of evil. He commissioned a work to be done for her grave site, a hand-carved image of her, prior to her pregnancy, that still stands on that lonely hill today. But as interesting as the gravesite is, not one day in all these decades Has Emma ever been known to haunt the place where her body lies? No. Emma is seen at Mansfield House just like her old nanny, Mary Finley. Both women have been seen all over the property, and on rare occasions, they have been seen together. The first tales that escaped from the whispered servants' mouths revolved around Emma's great love, the grand piano in the parlor, at the front of the house. Shortly after her interment, those who had attended her services had returned to the house for a dinner set up for those who had journeyed to the cemetery. The people were given plates and told they could sit anywhere in the house where they could find a seat. Those who had chosen the parlor got the fright of their lives as they spun small talk and quietly chewed the food provided for them. The piano sitting near the front window began to play, without anyone near it, the sad dirge that poured out of the keys, which were moving on their own to produce the music, sent everyone in the room pouring out on the front lawn. Many headed toward their different modes of transportation, with a vow to never return to Mansfield House. The piano still played inside, even as those braver souls checked it over for wires and such, denoting a prank, but finding none. The wailing cries when they began, not to mention the miserable crying of a baby, sent them all into a dead sprint from within the house. The last person out that door had a very final front door slam into their backside, clearly letting them know the mistress of the house, even though dead, had returned and was not pleased, and that they should most likely never come back. At the same time, the house was being terrorized. Those who had chosen to take a stroll in the gardens were accosted by the ghost of Mary Finley, who came around the rose bushes, only to have her neck give way and her head fall off. Now, Mary did not have this injury according to her doctor's written records, but she must have seen it as good ghost story fodder for the years to come, as it was. The whispered stories about the headless woman of Mansfield House were as well known as the falling woman, obviously as a reference to poor Emma Mansfield. The hauntings went on quite actively for the years that William tried to live in the house. There was never a cozy dinner party that was not interrupted by one lady or another. There was hardly a night when, shortly after the household had turned in for the night, the crying and wailing of a newborn would begin. And it would often not cease until daybreak. William Mansfield was exhausted and endeavored to spend more and more of his time elsewhere. The staff, on the other hand, was not that lucky. Molly Flynn had been cleaning late after one of these doomed parties. The piano had burst into activity right in the middle of the get-together. The group was a bit hardier than most, and were trying to figure out the trick of it when the pale, shimmering essence that was Emma Mansfield materialized, crying sadly. Those in the room were transfixed. Many women in the party withdrew dainty handkerchiefs from their small reticules and dabbed at their eyes, while the men went into full debunk mode. It was a shame that they could never debunk this spirit. That night had the whole party staring in disbelief as the spirit of Mary Finley appeared on the hall stairs, holding a wailing baby in her hands, as she cocked her head sideways, listening to Emma play, before screaming, "No!" then raising it to the air, hovering over the stairs before screaming in rage. Taking the child with her, they shot to the top of the third floor and disappeared. It most likely would have continued on this way indefinitely if William had not decided to bring his new wife Cecily home to Mansfield House. Kate Anderson always told this story to anyone who expressed any interest in the supernatural tales of Mansfield House. She was only 13 then and had been sent to Mansfield to work as a maid. The girl was good at her job, thorough, and was soon made a permanent part of the downstairs staff. This put Kate in the right position to view all the haunting in its finest moments. The first night the newlywed couple spent under Mansfield House's roof was a disaster. The couple had gone off to bed sometime after 10 p.m. Kate had been asked to straighten the room before retiring, so she had sat sleepily on the back servants' stairs, trying to keep her eyes open and waiting for Mr. and Mrs. Mansfield to start their ascent to the second floor. When she heard them enter the hall that ran the entire length of the house, she raced through the kitchen, past the dining room, and into the front parlor. With a little luck, she could whip this place into shape and get another extra hour of sleep before her morning duties called. The couple was standing in the middle of the stairs for some reason. both staring open-mouthed up toward the second floor. Whatever they were looking at had them transfixed, as neither one of them noticed Kate in the parlor. In the distance, Kate heard what sounded like a scuffle going on between two people, a man's angry voice, but she could not make out the words, and they were quickly followed by the sound of a scream, someone falling and hitting the floor below. Kate peeked around the post she had been hiding behind, and for a brief moment, she saw the ghost of the late Mrs. Mansfield lying broken on the floor. The new Mrs. Mansfield screamed, gave her husband a horrified look, and bolted up the stairs as fast as her dress would allow. Kate heard her slam one of the upstairs doors, and then heard a bolt slide. She watched as William Mansfield spread his legs in the middle of the hallway where his former wife had just vanished. He threw a clenched fist into the air, shaking it angrily. "Damn you to hell, Emma! I will get you for that," he shouted into the night. The next few weeks found the spirits hovering around the old spring house on the property, as William Mansfield had every crook and charlatan within 300 miles at the house, all making promises that Kate felt most of them could not keep, swearing they could send the spirits of both Mrs. Mansfield and Miss Finley to the other side. Kate said those days were extremely interesting for a young girl such as herself. With nightly haunting by his wife and her former nanny, William removed himself from Mansfield House to travel in Europe. One wonders if the ladies of Mansfield House were able to follow William, even at those great distances, as the tale returning from Paris was that at a prestigious party, William was noticed in the corner speaking with a woman in white, who seemed to be very angry with him. A man testified that he had seen this woman shove Mr. Mansfield backward through a 4-story window in the course of said argument. He died upon impact, and when they tried to find the woman, she was nowhere to be found. The lawyers shipped his body home, but he had left strict instructions that he was to be buried in a family plot near his parents and not with Emma on the quiet hill overlooking the river valley below. The house became quiet. The new Mrs. Mansfield had returned to her father's home the morning after witnessing Emma's death being replayed and had never returned to Mansfield House. The servants moved on to other positions in other households. People passing by the house at night would sometimes see a young lady in a white dressing gown entering the house from the long porch, carrying a candle. They said, if you dallied, the faint strains of the piano would come from the old parlor, the sad haunting music stretching across the air. An older woman would stand on these nights with a baby on her arms, singing Irish lullabies to the infant,